Nerd On.
Hello everyone, FutureFoe here, and welcome to the weekly show where I go over some of the most interesting news in gaming. This week we're going to start things off with some interesting insight into Overwatch's future from lead game designer Jeff Kaplan himself. Then we're going to dive into what games we can expect to see during this year's E3. And finally, some juicy rumors in reference to 2K and the future of Bioshock. This is GameByte. Jumping right into the news, Jeff Kaplan has been talking to a lot of people recently about some fundamental ideals in reference to Overwatch. Now, one idea that has been thrown around the community is the idea of initiating something like a player role queue, which lets you queue into the role you want to play during your match. Let's say you want to play DPS, that way the game can match you up against other players to form a better team comp, so you know you're not left with the magical team comp of Bastion, Hanzo, Junkrat, Mei, Torbjorn, and Widowmaker. Really guys, do we need that many defense heroes? Anyways, the whole idea is to mitigate this, but Jeff Kaplan in an interview with Kotaku this week stated that the game isn't quite ready for player role queues. He believes that this will be limiting to players, and the cool thing about Overwatch right now is that you can switch characters on the fly, and depending on the game, sometimes that includes changing your whole role. You might realize that you need another tank to go up against the team you're facing, so you would be limited in doing that if you were to be in a specific role. But of course, that could simply be just for the initial setup, and then you can open it up to switch characters afterwards. But the whole idea there is that it might be manipulated by people who want to change up the comp to better suit their own playstyle, and that might ruin it for other players. Jeff kind of implies that this would be heavily dependent on some kind of honor system, which, let's face it, we're on the internet, and it's not always the most honorable of places. Aside from that, Jeff also points that this is a system that hurt games like World of Warcraft, people who were healers or tanks were massed very quickly, and of course the large abundance of DPS players had to wait a much longer time to be able to be queued into a dungeon. And so while it's not something that they're against, it's not something that'll happen anytime soon. Now, one feature that might be coming to Overwatch sooner than you might expect is the ability to have cross-platform progression. This time in an interview with PC Games News, director Jeff Kaplan mentioned that this is something that they are exploring, but of course it raises a lot of challenges as well. While I don't necessarily care about cross-platform progression for your rank, I really hope they do it for unlockables and cosmetics. I think that's definitely long overdue and a little silly that it's not there already. Anyways, moving on, E3 is of course around the corner, and there's going to be a lot of awesome games there. Although we have a relatively short list of confirmed games, there's a much longer list of rumored games that are going to be there this year. Starting with the list of confirmed games, we have The Last of Us Part 2, Anthem, the 2018 release for Battlefield, The Division 2, Fortnite, and Super Smash Bros. Now, any video game fan, including myself, would be happy enough with that list alone, but of course we have a juicy list of rumored games that will make an appearance in one way or another, most likely as a reveal or an announcement of some kind. Pretty early on in development still, we have Borderlands 3, Cyberpunk 2077, Days Gone, Final Fantasy VII the Remake, Metroid Prime 4, a new Pokemon game for the Switch, the already announced Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and a Yoshi game also for the Switch. Now of course there's many more games other than this, but these were just some of the highlights, and if even a few of these games make an appearance in E3, I will be giddy as a schoolgirl. Now, of course, unfortunately, we don't have enough time to dive into these games now, but we will, in fact, be having an E3 roundup of some kind with the boys. I'll make it happen, don't worry. But anyways, moving on to the story of the week. We got some news coming in, kind of through Kotaku in a weird way, and it has to do with 2K Studios and the future of Bioshock. So if you're not aware, Jason Schreier is a prolific writer for Kotaku. He likes to focus on longer form features for the website. But anyways, he was doing a feature with Mafia 3's developers Hangar 13, owned by 2K Studios. And during the interview, they mentioned that there was a secret studio very close by that they couldn't really talk to a whole lot that was working on a very secret project codenamed Parkside. We don't know anything about this, and it's very interesting that we have a secret studio run by 2K, and a lot of people are thinking that this is going to be the next Bioshock game. This is made even more interesting as IGN reports. It turns out there was an investor call with 2K Studios back in November of last year where they talked about the release of another installment in a major franchise set for March of 2019. Now, of course, this could very easily be Bioshock. Bioshocks 1 and Infinite were created by an in-house studio that was created for those projects called Irrational Games that was led up by creative director Ken Levine, and you could argue that both Bioshock 1 and Bioshock Infinite revolutionized what you could do with storytelling in first-person shooters. Well, shortly after the release of Bioshock Infinite, Ken Levine did leave 2K to work on his own smaller projects. But of course, that's not going to stop 2K from making Bioshock games. They have in fact made a Bioshock game away from Ken Levine before. Since the development of Bioshock Infinite was so lengthy, 2K Games took it upon themselves to create a small in-house studio called 2K Marin, based out of California, and they were the ones who were responsible to the sequel to Bioshock 1. The game was a direct sequel and was even in the same setting as before, but a lot of people think it wasn't as good as the original. And of course, the absence of Ken Levine's involvement was very much noticeable. So the question obviously remains whether or not they can make a good Bioshock game without Ken Levine, and I think the answer is yes. Before, I think 2K was using 2K Marin to kind of create a filler game in between, but now they really want to take the franchise seriously, at least that's what it sounds like, and with the great lengths they're taking to make sure it stays a secret, it definitely sounds like they want to take it a lot more seriously. Now, of course, another possibility for this game coming in March of 2019 is the hotly anticipated Borderlands 3, which is already rumored to be coming out around the same time, although it's hard to imagine that game not developed by its original developers, Gearbox, which doesn't qualify as a secret studio. Of course, there's not enough information. Hopefully we'll get a big reveal during E3, but of course we'll just have to wait and see. Anyways, what games are you hotly anticipating to see at E3? And do you think they're making another Bioshock game? Let's discuss. As always, a like is much appreciated, and be sure to subscribe to Nerd On for much more gaming content. Thanks for watching, happy gaming, and I will see you all next time.